Oh yeah. You know, it's a march downtown, gotta go drop something for a friend from my neighborhood. Sun is shining on this beautiful November 19th. Still more, you know, the Scorpio. Full moon wave. We gotta commence with gratitude. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and yeah, financially stressed, but willingly loving to work as I am working. I've been working over the past years, independent Aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and theorist. And I gotta salute those farmers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, grocery store clerks, and those construction workers right there. Construction workers of North America, for the North American Collective Workers Party. Let's get that rock and roll. For the farmers, for the butchers, for the daycare workers, who changing some of those diapers. Smelly on the go. We gotta get it on the road. Beautiful. Gotta look up sometimes to just see the majestic environment. And of course, you got nature and you got civilization and parallel right. Yours truly from my neighborhood going east, downtown Montreal. Independent Aspie, got at Asperger's, also known as HFA, high functioning autism, and it's Geopolitics 24/7. Gonna be a freestyle again, you know. We're gonna discuss some geopolitics, maybe a little bit of a sports fitness, and yours truly always love when I see somebody working out, training and exercising like my fellow citizen. Always encourage fitness, and my holy trinity of obsessive interests, you know, it is Geopolitics 24/7, fitness, sports. Dancing is my favorite sport, parallel to dancing and fitness. Sports, it is of course rock and roll, always rock and roll for the farmers, truckers on the road. Those in the fast food, gotta be some LOV respect. Those flipping some burgers, cheeseburgers, you know, those in the teachers teaching some mathematics, some algebraic function and equations, and all levels, geography and whatnot, whatever that is with that. Gonna get that rock and roll and gonna get it for the goal. That is XYZ, gonna get that foundation and gonna get it all the way to that east. Grateful, thankful, rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee. And from my neighborhood, we're gonna head on a little bit of downtown. Maybe do a 1-part, 2-part, 3-part series, November 19th, Tuesday. Gotta give a salutations, of course, to my anonymous friend who, if I make $1 million, gonna give her half. That's 50%. And I am financially stressed today, but open for business 24/7. You know, I got a mark 5 years ago. I predicted what's happening now across the North American Collective and across the world, worldwide, international, but of course, because I'm an independent geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and theorist, and I predicted an international conflagration back in 2019, in October, and that's what I predicted back in 2019, of course, because that's my obsessive interest, and I am an independent geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and theorist, and gotta get it for the LOV, and gotta get it for the love, and gotta get it for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, and all those children, the youth of the empire, the kisses and hugs. They're happy, I'm happy. They're joyous. They're joyous, I'm joyous, and that's what matters at the end of the day. And that's my children, but not my children, because I don't have really children on my own, but I would defend them coast to coast, and gotta get it for the XYZ, and gotta give me some LOV, you know, for the youth there, and for the youth of the world, you know, is their safe, secure, and is their North American Collective, is their future. And of course, we're gonna play that defense like that hardball ball. We're gonna play that defense like that hardball ball. AKA the blackout ball where my 49ers lost, of course, and we gotta get it on that joy, you know. And if the youth are happy, joyous, safe, secure, I'm happy, joyous, and you know, we gotta balance. Now I'm in the public, you know, and I'm a weirdo with my obsessive interests and of course my weirdness, Asperger's. I'm part of my minority and with HFA, high functioning autistic, and I'm part of a minority of course of citizens. 0.44%, less than 1%, less than half of a percentile have Asperger's, being an Aspie, being HFA. And of course I live with it, the symptoms, because there's no medication for Aspies. There's only management of the symptoms, and managing the symptoms means that I have to be aware when I do a little bit of conversation with it, and I do a little bit of conversation with others not to be overly indulged in geopolitics, rock and roll, or fitness if those are not shared as obsessive interest or an interest at all. Somebody might not be interested in any of the aforementioned at all, right? It's obsessive interest. And I gotta give some salutation, to those, let's go for IT tech workers a little bit. How that 3G, 4G, 5G works. Sometimes I meditate and I know a little bit of a functionality in theory, but less in practice. I know my geopolitics, and of course we have arrived at a geopolitical point of escalation and contention, and it's in a parallel, general way, not in a detailed manner, but of course equating to my scenario, which of course was presented online in October 2019 in a video when I've described one of a multiplex events of a scenario point, or a World War III scenario point event, where of course it seems that it is unfolding in such a way. We hope we can avert it. But of course the new geopolitical news is of course that Joe Biden, President of the United States, has given the permission to and for Ukraine, my fellow brethren, some of that red Dragonomy. That's what I said for that red. Yeah, red's my favorite color. Pledge your allegiance, legions, thou art legions. For the defense, North Americans, all who come to join us, we're going to need to rebuild a lot of infrastructure. But back to what I was saying is, of course, that there has been, of course, in the news that permission has been given to Ukrainian armed forces to utilize and use the ATACMS missiles. So they're long-range missiles which can reach further than they can reach into Russia. So permission has been given, and there was a warning by Vladimir Putin and his regime not to do that. And until now, they had delivered the weapons, but they were not to be used outside of Ukraine, and now used to encourage to hit Russian territory, to be used outside of the territory of Ukraine, and into Russia. So basically, to sum it up, of course, that's the point of escalation. And from the recent news, because geopolitics with yours truly is 24/7, so doing a revision and checking the latest news information available from the morning, I read that Russia has revised its nuclear deterrence, nuclear use strategy to lower the threshold, basically fundamentally to generalize, not to use too much verbose, intellectual, academic, scholarly language or linguistics, due to the fact that what it means, because that's another ASPE symptoms, ASPEs, we tend to be overly verbose and utilize too much language which is not a parallel, of course, is intellectual, academic, and which cannot be usually simply comprehended. So in other words, I have to manage this symptom of which many ASPEs share. I'm an individual ASPE, but to be as simple as I can in my explanations and my discussions without being too scholarly, academic, or intellectually sophisticated in my use of language, because that's a problem that many ASPEs, people with high functioning autism, have. So basically, breaking down in a more simple terms is that, of course, Russia has lowered its threshold for potential nuclear use of nuclear weapons. And of course, during the Cold War, more than 44 years, almost 45 years of the Cold War, between 1947, March 1947, and of course, December 1991. So almost 45 years of the Cold War, almost 45 years. I say 44 years and 9 months, almost 45 years of the Cold War, of course. They got to use, of course, their many ICBM rockets, which of course were used, many rockets were used and built, ICBM rockets, and we got to go all the way to the east, Or we got to get a little salutation to those train conductors, plane conductors, aviation. How's that post-Canada strike labor ongoing? And of course I am calling, blah, blah, blah. I've been calling for a reduction. Please. NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB. Please reduce the cost of the tickets by 44.9%. 44.9% is my estimated cost of the reduction of the tickets for the NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, and MLB. To be reduced ASAP starting today. Let's get it on November 19th. Somebody who loves sports, but I would definitely, if I would be able to afford, I cannot afford financially, economic in terms of the monetary, because of course I do have a debt, $10,000 in debt, but I would definitely, of course, support women's sports leagues. women's sports leagues. Of course, I will get a little bit of that Victoire jersey, and that is what it is with the rock and roll, with it. And Victoire jersey for the PVHL, Professional Women's Hockey League, and I gotta give a shout out. Needs a little bit of color because you know I like my red, orange, and bright colors, but nonetheless, I kind of like the structure, and I'm a fan of construction workers. Before I interject, of course, I would definitely buy women's hockey leagues and go see Montreal Victoire women's hockey leagues, and Habs also. I would go see both if I would be available. Dancing is my favorite sport, of course. Dancing is my favorite sport, but I always admire construction workers. And of course, the other day I was listening for like 5 hours. They kept on discussing about mortgages and housing. And now once they discuss the construction workers on the ground. Hey, merci. On the ground, but they build it, and I'm really a fan of construction workers, how they go on with the knowledge, the brains, and the muscle, and I always enjoy when they build it, and I'm a fan, you know, respect and much love to the construction workers in North America, and I offer some kisses and washing of the feet. You know what it is, washing of the feet, you know, washing of the feet, and that's it, that's all, and we gotta go on that rock and roll, and XYZ with it, so that is what it is, so, and it is of course what it is now, and that is what it is, and of course I'm calling them construction workers in North America, of course, to come build. The two right there on the Canadian-US border. Let's go, North Americans. The Forgotten Goddess Temple, I wasn't sure. I gotta double check, because you know when you cross the street, although it's one way, the brakes can malfunction, you know. So I always gotta check turn my head, you know. Turn my head. Left and right, because the brakes can malfunction potentially. So I'm always a bit on the alarm, on the prudent side, you know, when I am on the streets, because I'm always wary of what if the citizen driver presses the accelerator instead of the brake, you know. What if the citizen driver presses the accelerator instead of the brake? And what if the brakes malfunction? And the other day I was discussing what if the solar flare from my Pope, the King, the Sun, comes and smashes, and the other day I saw there was an accident. Supposedly the person, it was in the newspaper, had blamed it on the sun, said the sun blinded me, so sun's strong today, so just left and right, you know. So being a fan of construction workers, and asking the construction workers to help build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, I'm always meditating on the building stratagems and how they built, and of course it's brains and muscle, but we have a lot of building capabilities in North America, you know, and I'm always admiring on the buildings and on the scaffolds. Be safe and get back home, make them LOV. So hey, if you're construction workers, rock and roll, help me build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and the North American Collective, the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, the North American Imperial People's Coliseum. Let's go NFL, finance, public-private partnership on the Canadian-US border, and the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. That's what I will to build. With the House of the Dragon, I need a pyramid, running this on the United States, US-Canadian border for the North American Union. My call for the public-private partnership, Quebec, Canadian, North American here, sending some LOV to the construction workers. Always thinking about them on the scaffolds, on those big cranes. Got a little bit of a crane fetish. I always meditate when I see the cranes, and of course, as an ASPE, geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, you know that how my brain, I discussed it in the past, it's a constant thing in our 24/7, basically, in our obsessive interest. So now I'm meditating geopolitics and geopolitical revision and analysis on the events of yesterday in the past, of course, years, 20th century, and back to where I had said that I predicted, and I got proof of work, is I predicted an international conflagration back in 2019 in October. So I'm putting a lot of what I see when I see on the roads, when I meditate upon the truckers, the firefighters, the train conductors. That's a train line. Those are railroads. That's going east. We're heading east, and in the back of me is the west. That's south, and the finger's pointing north. The finger's pointing north now. So a little bit of that XYZ. So many things I don't know. So many things I am mediocre, average, and so. At some things I am myself mediocre, average, and so. At some things I am myself mediocre, average, and so. So many things that I am myself mediocre, average, and so. You know, not a geopolitics. Not a dancing being my favorite sport, and of course not a rock and roll, not a rock and roll, you know. So that's what it is with that, and we're gonna get it on the go. Somebody gotta sing for the boys and girls in blue, somebody gotta sing for the boys and girls in blue, somebody gotta sing for the boys and girls in blue, and we gotta go get it on the line, and we always got to get transpositions of XYZ, and I'm always meditating on the intellectual capabilities of all of us, how we are going to defend coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And now, of course, my mind goes in a parallel, not dimension really, because I'm with my feet right here on the ground, but it turns to geopolitics. So you have to understand that with people with autism, Asperger's, geopolitical studies and analysis, well, for me, because that's my obsessive interest, but it could be anything else for anything else, and anything else for anything else, you know. It could be whatever it is the case may be. Whatever it is the case, as an individual, geopolitics is my obsessive interest as an independent geopolitical aspect. Geopolitics is my obsessive interest. So it's not applicable to all people with Asperger's, you know, but it's applicable to me. You know, that's what it is. To myself is geopolitics. For another aspect, it could be science, mathematics. It could be, of course, hockey. It could be sports, geology, geography, finance. It could be, of course, something else. I have my trinity. And my trinity is geopolitics 24/7. Geopolitics 24/7, rock and roll. Farmers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, grocery store clerks, those in the daycares now. Changing diapers, hey, don't bet it all on Wall Street. You know, the workers gotta eat. The plumbers and the electricians and the carpenters, and you know, those on the rare conductors on the rare, and my cousin doing up for more jogging. And you know, I gotta state, of course, again, that's my obsessive interest, geopolitics. And now my mind, of course, is always involved in, usually, speaking for myself as an individual with Asperger's, our minds are usually involved in one of our obsessive interests. It's kind of constant, you know. So I might see something, the taxi here, I might meditate in a geopolitical perspective. The taxis, the taxi drivers, then the taxi situation from a defensive perspective, and of course being that they're part of the North American Collective. And of course another example which I could give more concretely would be the highways. The highway. So this highway goes south. These cars are going south, maybe to the US border. So of course meditating from a perspective of geopolitics is of course something that we need to secure and rebuild, you know, to have geopolitical strength and strength and defense. And also it's not all to base everything about strength, because you have to have some love and understanding. And an esprit de corps, because it's not all about the money and Wall Street. Because otherwise, you see, you're going to put on a uniform, join the Canadian Armed Forces, and as somebody who served in a past life, or was at the beginning, before it was called the Mounties, the RCMP in a past life, served about 5 years, and I was born in the USA 3 times, once as a woman, twice as a man. When I was born as a man, 156 years apart. Served in the United States Army, 156 years apart. Served in the United States Army, 156 years apart. Served in the same army. But 156 years apart, same wars, two different wars. Same army, basically. I made it in time here. So see how that works? As of course, that's one of my mystic components of beliefs in reincarnations. Not everybody shares that, but I'm my spiritual path, and mystic, of course, is that, of course, I believe in reincarnations. I'm a strong believer in reincarnations. And that's what it is there. So now this is a great geopolitical context here. So my mind switched to geopolitics and integrating all, not just this highway, but the highways across North America, North American Collective together, and the need to rebuild via my DRT, debt refusion theory, and the universal exchange unit. See that one? So that's always a constant with me, geopolitics. So now I integrated and I put in context of my geopolitical analysis of 2019, of my continuing geopolitical theoretical analysis of today. Because it's geopolitics 24/7. So now where we are, on the verge of World War III, my initiatives, my stratagems, and my protocols are strictly from a defensive perspective, strictly from a defensive perspective, strictly from a defensive perspective. You have to, that has to be understood. So when I say support the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, I mean support it from a geopolitical theoretical analysis and from a perspective, which of course there has to be a public-private partnership, across the collective North American civilizational complex, a PPP, a public-private partnership, That is the complex, that is the context, of my geopolitical theoretical analysis. And of course, now meditating on the hospital, of course, being our ambulance drivers, firefighters, LOV to our firefighters, LOV. See, making an assessment of the infrastructure, as I made in past videos, it has to be renewed. This infrastructure really has to be renewed. And by my DRT, we're going to be able to have that. I'm going to discuss that in a bit. I just want to be prudent to cross here because I have a backpack and I'm kind of in the middle of the parking lot right here. Parking lot, and that's why we got to do it with that, and that's why we got to do it with the go, so that's what we got to get doing with the go, so we got 17 seconds, and that's what we're gonna get doing with the 13 seconds left on the clock. I got plenty of time. It's not like I'm running to get on the touchdown, but got to get it on the down. So meditating on that, of course, I can integrate the traffic lights also from a geopolitical perspective. This will be a little bit more, it requires a more scenario, more imagination, because what ifs basically. So now, since we got involved in conflicts, there's the potential for nation states and foreign actors to finance not only internal discord, but the sabotage of highways, sabotaging of the traffic lights. So many things I don't know. How the traffic lights are connected. I know it's part of Montreal City, they're connected, and we have the system and systems. But generally, to put it overall, that is a possibility, right? Possibility of foreign hostile actors due to XYZ factors. So foreign hostile actors due to XYZ factors to try to sabotage internal Quebec, Canada, North America, from a North American perspective. Because Quebec, Canada, North America is all I know, basically. Right? Although born in many past lives, many incarnations, my protocols, initiatives are first and foremost for the North American collective. And I got to give a salutation for the Montreal Metro workers, who build the subways. Oh, careful. I gotta go, Chris, and we gotta go by the side here. I'm just gonna drop a little bit, but from the traffic lights, we now go to the public transit. See, that's a subway metro system. Has more than 44, right? Has more than 44 stations. Go underneath. Right? And imagine the builders who build it. Things we take for granted. But took so much brains and muscle, just to build it underneath. I think there's more than 44 maybe. So much was built. Underneath the subway, the metro system. It's quite impressive across North America, across the world, of course. It's not just the Montreal metropolis island, 2.5 million people reality. It's a reality of many cities. See, that's a subway. It goes, I take it sometimes, it goes underneath. It was built in the 60s. So many had built with brains and muscle. So many had built it. underneath. Brains and muscle underneath the subway system. There's steel and metal and wires and brains and muscle. Again, civilization is a privilege. It takes brains and muscle to build the hospital, to build all this. It has built all this, the sewers. Thank you, public workers. That's why I got running water in the sewers. I got running water underneath. I got running water in my place. Hydro-Quebec workers, LOV. Our clean, zero pollution, zero emission electricity goes to 5 or 6 states, all the way to Manhattan Island. Manhattan Island gets 1/5, 20% goes to Manhattan Island, New York. That's considerable percentage of the electricity from Quebec. Many of the dams were built in the 20th century. Many of all the buildings and everything that we have as a North American complex or civilizational complex in North America are thanks to like my fellow citizen, senior citizen like him. So it takes a little bit of that old school, it takes a little bit of new school, it takes a little bit of two to tango. Sometimes my centrism is pro-labor, love, revolutionary, based on my trinity of theories for the North American renewal, rejuvenation, and strictly merely for defense, security, and service. That has to be understood, because as much as I can pronounce myself on geopolitics, it is, of course, my geopolitical theories, explanation, and analysis is fundamentally for the North American complex, for North America, what I call the North American civilizational complex, for North America, for Quebec, Canada, for North America. That is for here. 7 years ago, I traversed Canada coast to coast. 7 years ago, I traversed Canada coast to coast. 2017, I was depressed and suicidal prior to that event. When I crossed Canada coast to coast, I went from Montreal to Vancouver 3.5 days by bus. That was pretty hardcore. Then from Montreal in September, Montreal to Nova Scotia, 25 hours and 44 minutes. 25 hours and 44 minutes. It took to get from Montreal to Vancouver to Halifax, Nova Scotia. That event, 2017, completely changed my life. It established a strong esprit de corps. My family here in Canada, my family coast to coast, ocean to ocean in Quebec, and the North Americans, because I was born in previous incarnations, past lives. Once I was born as a woman, twice as a man, served both times in the United States Armed Forces, 156 years apart, different wars, same U.S. Army. So I say we're going to have to play that defense like the Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl, when my 49ers lost, but here it is, and saw somebody holding hands earlier, so that gives me some joy, some hope, because it's not all about fight, and it's not all about LOV, and somebody wearing red, my favorite color. He's doing a little bit of work there. He's doing a little bit of work with that, and I'm always opening for work, for business, 24/7 for work, for business, to get it on the go. And see the construction workers, is there that build it, they that build it, and they that build it, and it's the construction workers which I will to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple on the Canadian-US border on Mount Royal with the dragon pyramid, scarlet, red, crimson, House of the Dragon, and the North American Imperial Coliseum. And got a salute now on the word, the truckers, the warehouse workers. Canada Post a strike, I applied. I thought I was going to get a little bit of business opportunity, but it seems that it was canceled due to the strike. So there's disruptions. Myself, I live my own disruptions. I was employed, but due to Asperger's, HFA, high functioning autism, it's a struggle to maintain long-term employment, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about what it is. And once again, it's NOT. No. NOT is not a mental illness. It is a neurodivergent mental psychic condition. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. It is a neurological mental divergent condition which makes me predisposed to obsessive interests. And those obsessive interests revolve around geopolitics. For me, geopolitics, rock and roll, dancing, sports and fitness, but dancing being my favorite sport, dancing being my favorite sport. So for different aspects, it could be different obsessive interests, but it's always those obsessive interests preoccupy the majority of our daily times, of our 24/7, I could say. For me, it's geopolitics, sports, fitness, dancing is my favorite sport, and rock and roll, the holy trinity of Rainbow Dragon. And Adrian Hanna Dragon, who's grateful, thankful, although financially stressed and been depressed, been suicidal, survived COVID. COVID was like death, pestilence, and disease for me when I had it in 2020, February, March. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. I know it sounds like a rock and roll, hardcore, death metal song or something like that of that genre. Although I sing rock and roll, I can maybe make a song. Death, pestilence, and disease. All my enemies, goddess, goddess, goddess from Sunlight Crowley. Bury me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey. May I be avenged out sevenfold. I'd rather be kissing than the told. I would be kissing than the hugging. Firefighters, LOV, farmers and the butchers and the nurses and the doctors, grocery store clerks, hey, on that warehouse, they building truckers, they building with a crane up, they building those construction, let's build the North American Imperial People's Coliseum, that's what's up. North American Imperial People's Coliseum, that's what's up. North American People's Imperial Coliseum, let's build it on the U.S. border. 50-50. Private-public partnership, support the dream, the dancing goddess. And the Dragon Kingdom. The Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership across the collective North American civilizational complex across North America. And here we are, meditating on how this building was constructed, built, I don't know, around maybe the 60s, 70s, but nonetheless, it's the construction workers, and we need to implement that DRT, debt refusion theory. I'm not going to discuss the DRT, debt refusion theory, before I forget. It stands for D debt, R refusion T theory. It is the only solution, the motive behind me making the statement that is the only solution for the public and much of the private financial situation that we find ourselves in is because, of course, due to the fact that we now pay 46.5 billion in interest on the Canadian public debt. You can check with the TIF Mackler Bank of Canada, 46.5 billion on the Canadian US public debt, on the Canadian US public debt, on the Canadian US public debt, on the Canadian US public debt. We pay 46.5 billion in interest, 46.5 billion in interest. A billion is 1,000 million. Keep in mind that a billion has 9 zeros, signs 9 zeros. That's what a billion has, 9 zeros. You gotta keep that in mind. A billion has 9 zeros. That's 46.5 billion. That's 46,000 million. It went from 2020, 2021, it went from 20.3 billion, 20.3 billion, it went from 20.3 billion, that is 20,000 million. Just the interest paid, just the interest, not just the debt servicing, in other words, just the interest paid on the public debt. So this is just squarely the interest we paid. It more than doubled due to COVID, of course, the COVID implementation or the COVID security protocols for a health emergency, that can be understandable. But the fact is that it more than doubled. So that's why I make that statement that there's no solution but my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the universal exchange unit. That is the motive why I'm making that statement. And of course, I know that statement, of course, and that statement is a fact. That's the motive. We pay 46.5 billion in interest, brothers and sisters. That's how much we pay. It's just the interest on the public debt. There's no other way but my DRT theory, so I'm going to try to explain it the best of my ability, the best that I can, of course, in the circumstances, all things considered. I got to, of course, explain it in the best possible way with a simple explanation as I can. It's a simple explanation as I can, although some things are maybe a little bit on more complex side, but nonetheless, I'm gonna try, of course, to get it on the go and they gotta try to do it on the implementation on the XYZ. It has to be implemented. There's no other way but the DRT. You can explain it how you want and dissect what I'm gonna say, but nonetheless, the point remains that there's no option but the DRT, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the universal exchange unit, for the creation of the UE, the universal exchange unit, the universal exchange unit. So that is the D debt R refusion T theory. That is the debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, for the creation of the UE, for the creation of the UE, for the creation of the UE. That is what it has to be doing, the debt refusion theory. So the D RT, the debt refusion theory, also includes monetary integration theory. It's important, super important to remind, and of course to stay and to note, of course, that the DRT, my debt refusion theory, also creates and integrates monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is exactly what was done in the European Union. So monetary integration theory is exactly what was done in the European Union. In the 90s, the Germans destroyed their central bank. The Italians got rid of the lira. The French also did the same. And they destroyed their old banks in the 90s. And they created the ECB, a common European central bank, the European Central Bank, the ECB. And they created a new currency. They no longer have their old currencies, the euro. So my DRT contains in it the monetary integration theory, which is the theory which was implemented in the European Union, 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 which was implemented in the European Union. So my DRT contains that theory. So D for debt, R for refusion, T for theory. The debt refusion theory contains monetary integration theory. That is important to note. 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 And of course, my DRT theory contains monetary integration theory. So, and there's no other way. Why do I make that statement? And that statement is fact. It's an emergency. We pay 46.5 billion in interest. Paradoxically, with some enthusiasm, I put on the table, along with trillions of kisses, the DRT, debt refusion theory. It has to be implemented. There's no other solution but the DRT, the debt refusion theory, The debt refusion theory has to be implemented because we pay 46.5 billion in interest. There's no other way around it now, due to so much interest which we pay on the public debt. So we're going to take all the public debt, we're going to take all the public and the private debt. My private debt is $10,000 to the RBC. So that is my private debt. I have a private debt of $10,000. That is my private debt. 10,000 as a citizen to the RBC. So we're going to take all the debt, public and private debt of Canada. We're going to convert it to the US dollars because the United States currency still is the currency of choice for world trade, international business, global import and export. So we're going to convert all the public-private debt of Canada into US dollars. So all that debt is going to be converted to US dollars. Canada first. This is for Canada first. So it could be it's North America, but Canada first. So of course, for Canada first, North America as a whole collective, parallel to what they did in the European Union, but my DRT is a bit different. So all the debt converted to US dollar, all Canadian public-private debt, that money is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. Of course, Canada first, and if they will, with the United States, they will with the United States, of course. But of course, Mexico, Haiti, Cuba is part of the North American complex. But Canada first. So all the debt, the public and the private debt, So all the public and the private debt converted to US dollars. So all the public and the private debt converted to US dollars is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. That money we're going to send in is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. So all the public and the private debt is going to be the initial money supply. All the initial money supply for a new central bank. So all the public and the private debt, going to be the initial money supply, right? All that money, we're going to put an interest rate level of 10%. It could be below, it could be 9.3, 7.18, 4.18, 1.56, 4 below 3.33, 6.1, 9.3, below 10%. So it will be 10% maximum after we implement it. It starts with me discussing it now because it has to be implemented. Listen, there's no choice, brothers and sisters. I say this with enthusiasm, paradox, because geopolitics is my obsessive interest and I've studied, and I got to give a shout out to an anonymous acquaintance who about 7 years ago on the holidays, I believe December 23rd, 24th, I opened the book on the 24th and I read it like 7 times in the coming years, and I've written on it. It was a bit on the conspiratorial side, but it had a lot of real-time information about ancient Egyptian finance, ancient Roman, ancient Sumerian, Babylon, and ancient China, and present day. It was also big chapters on the financial crisis of the 21st century and the 20th century, and of course it was related, of course, to the great financial crisis of 2007, 2010. It was related to the great financial crisis of 2007, 2010, and it was a bit, it has some conspiracy theories. I'm not much into that, but other than that, it has some good information, and I'm partly inspired by that because I wrote on that book and I meditated, and that's where the DRT kind of, a little bit of it, got the inspiration. So shout out to an anonymous acquaintance. And the DRT debt refusion theory for the creation of the U is the only solution. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt. That money converted to US dollars is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank, It's going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank, right? For a new central bank. So all the money, the private and the public debt, going to be the initial money supply. I got to turn my head left or right before I cross the street, because you never know. So all the debt, public and private debt, is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. All the public private debt, that money, we're going to put an interest rate level of 10% on it. 10% on it. With that money, and I'm hoping US will accord, and we're going to create North American UE and the North American Central Bank. But Canada first, United States second, and third, Mexico, and then whoever else wills, I say. But Canada first, United States second, and Mexico third, North America third. And of course, whoever else wills after, whoever has the will thereafter. It could be transatlantic with the Europe, but first Canada. So we're going to set an interest rate level of 10% max, and with all that money, we're going to be able to rebuild the North American collective infrastructure or Canadian infrastructure, the bridges, the roads, the aqueducts, the public works, mass public works building. Mass public works. Build more hydroelectric dams. Finance citizens to work out, train, exercise. Finance my workout for UEs, which I've created back in 2019, the General Integrated Whole Body Training System. Finance more workout for UEs, because that's going to be the new currency. Because all the private public debt converted to US dollars is going to be the initial money supply. We're going to create, like in Europe. That's where the monetary integration theory enters. In my DRT. That's where the monetary integration enters. The monetary integration theory enters when I say the monetary integration theory enters. It's here. We're going to do the same, create a new currency called the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot universal exchange unit. The UE. Based on the US dollar. That's why I'm calling him my astrological brother Scorpio Bill Gates, or Black Rock, Blackstone is Larry Fink, another Scorpio, and Joe Biden, another Scorpio. It could be Sagittarius, Leo, Pisces, all the astrological sign, but nonetheless, whatever the case may be. So all that public and that private debt is going to be the initial money supply for this new central bank. We're going to create the UE, a new currency based on the value of the US dollar. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The UE. The universal exchange unit with an interest rate level thereafter of 10% maximum. With that money, we're going to be able to mass finance citizens for tourism to grow across North America, because 7 years ago, that was the event which completely changed my life. And since ever I crossed Canada coast to coast, that also made me, of course, come out of being depressed and suicidal. Made me finish my depression, and I established the strongest esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and all come to join us. The 40 plus million here, and my brothers and sisters in the USA. I always say I'm Quebec, Canadian, North American, and this is my home. Personally, I do not consider myself a member of a diaspora, and I just love my pyramid. You can see a little bit of that pyramid. Gonna check it out here when I cross the streets. That is a little bit of the pyramid, which you can see, and I gotta wait to cross the street safely here after the car. I still turn my head. See that pyramid there? Yeah. That pyramid, see? That pyramid, that is my favorite skyscraper. That is my favorite skyscraper. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, the debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE is the only solution, brothers and sisters. That is the only solution, the DRT, debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, So that is what it is. That's just what we must do. The implementation of the DRT, the debt refusion theory, as and is the only solution where we are now at this point in time. With the international finance, with the public-private debt, it reached exponential, unsustainable levels to pay just the interest on the debt. Just the interest on the debt is 46.5 billion. A billion has 1,000 million. That's 46,000 million. So the creation of the UE is the only solution. The creation of the UE is the only solution. The creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, is the only solution. Is the only solution now, where we are at this point in time. I mean, I don't know for other things, but now that is the only solution. There's no alternative to this at this point in time. So that is what it is, and that's the rock and roll with it. And we have to implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE. And now, once again, there's no alternative to my DRT. Yeah, it has to be done. It has to be done because the public financial collapse is unfolding, with the public interest on the public debt to have more than doubled. So it has to be implemented. I have to go to the washroom here because I have to go. So I'm gonna go use the public washrooms right at the corner there. So nonetheless, that is the DRT, debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. That is what I need to be doing. That's what we need to be doing, and that's what I need to be meditating about. And here we are today. The DRT is the only solution. Debt refusion theory. The debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, the UE is the only solution, and that's what we gotta be doing. The debt refusion theory for the creation of a new currency based on the value of the US dollars, the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. And we're gonna go in, and then we're gonna go out and wash my hands. Public hygiene is super important. See, they got the disinfectant still there. If not, I'm gonna wash my hands. That's what it is now.